How many times do the Liberals need to be reminded when you're negotiating with Donald Trump, the only way to work with him is to sell what the win for the Americans are? We as Canadians have aluminum, we have steel. The United States absolutely needs a negotiator like Trump. The only way to approach a trade negotiation is to offer how Canada can help the USA. He's only interested in how the US can be helped out by the deal. Make it prominent, US aluminum, US steel, Canadian aluminum, Canadian steel, Canadian products that the United States needs. Work with them there rather than the Canadians continuously under Mark Carney. I don't know whether they're intentionally throwing these negotiations or not, because it's so ludicrous the way they're negotiating, but they're continually insulting the United States of America. That is the exact opposite approach to negotiation you should take with Donald Trump. Nothing is going to get his back up more quickly, and him reacting the way he did the other day after Ontario. They were running $75 million worth of ads, misdisplaying Ronald Reagan quotes from the 70s, making it look as though he would have been against today's tariffs, when it's blatantly obvious that the U.S. economy is doing just fine. And there absolutely was an argument to be made that other countries like Canada, who still pitifully are spending less than 2% of our national resources a year on self-defense, there's been a lot of freeloading going on off the United States for defense purposes as well as for trade purposes. The United States has been taken advantage of for a long period of time. So as a Canadian negotiator looking out for Canadian jobs, and Mark Carney's already off to a disastrous start. $63 billion have already left the economy since Carney was elected. His first quarter, GDP fell 1.6%, a massive drop. Stellantis left. Crown Royal left. Hundreds of thousands of Canadian jobs have left the country. It was a disaster, our economy, under Justin Trudeau, and it's gotten even worse under Mark Carney, the guy who sold us as the elbows up guy. He's been the only one of the few negotiators who haven't been able to get the initial tariffs off. We're still at 35%. Well, Europe got it down to 15. Many countries got it down to 0. And now you have these ridiculously stupid ads insulting Trump. Come on, it's so obvious in negotiating with this guy. The absolute worst way to approach it is to insult him, and particularly to insult him with misquotes from Ronald Reagan. I cannot think of a more ridiculous way to insult this man that he is clearly going to take to heart. Now, the Canadian negotiations are off the table. We're almost definitely going to continue to have the tariffs on all products outside of the USMCA. And with renegotiation for the USMCA coming up shortly, you better bet your ass in all likelihood Canada's not going to be involved in the deal. So where are the elbows up morons who talked about how Carney was some sort of an economic savant and he was the only way who could get us through these treacherous times? Has it not become clear Carney's interested in getting himself and his business is extremely rich? Brookfield Asset Management is some insane number, like 45% since he was elected. A vast majority of the 570 companies, 90% plus of which are in the United States. So crazy for the Canadian Prime Minister of over 90% of his investments in the United States. They're up massively. Brookfield Asset Management has received 42 contracts from the Canadian government since Mark Carney was elected as Prime Minister. So for Mark Carney's personal portfolio, becoming the Prime Minister has been a godsend. But for average, everyday Canadians, our economy continues to worsen, continues to get worse and worse and worse. The anti-immigration numbers in Canada have never been as high as they are right now. Yet Mark Carney and the Liberals continue to overshoot their temporary foreign worker estimates. They had a massive estimate of 667,000 for this year. They've already allowed in over 100,000 over that. They're not keeping their numbers. Everybody knows that importing millions of people is bad for the economy. Every economist agrees with this. There's quotes from Mark Carney directly saying this in something like 2015, before the world went crazy and woke took over and borders ceased to exist. It's really crazy out in Canada. We're on stolen land. But also borders don't exist. Can you explain that one to me? So Carney has now overseen a Canadian economy that continues to be, by many metrics, the weakest in the G7. This despite the fact being a country that has absolutely incredible natural resources, LNG, oil, that countries are begging us for. Germany, Japan are literally begging us for our LNG, and we refuse to send it because Carney and Brookfield can't profit off it. It's so obvious that Carney is running this government for his own profit, not for the benefit whatsoever of the Canadian people. Like I said, you look through a chart at all of Carney's business connections, they're all doing fantastically well. He's jet setting overseas and meeting with business leaders. This guy's never in Canada. He didn't even spend his adult life in this country. He's never in Canada, and now he's jet setting around with private investment guys in the UK. What does that have to do with Canadian citizens? Explain that to me. How is that working to the benefit of Canadian citizens? And he has no passion. You can tell this man's not fighting for Canadians. He's fighting for himself and his wealthy cadre buddies at the WF Davos and Brookfield Asset Management. For Canada to have taken the approach with Trump that they have is embarrassing. Is embarrassing, and it almost shows, it seems as though the government is intentionally sabotaging these negotiations, because any savvy negotiator, knowing Trump's psychological profile, would do anything but insult him. They'd start talking constructively about how Canada can be of assistance to the United States. But these absolute dimwits, Doug Ford, who's technically a conservative, but he's really a liberal. I mean, let's be honest about Doug Ford. He's been so far up. He's been further up Carney's ass than any other premier. I wouldn't be surprised if Carney was involved in the decision-making process to run these incredibly stupid ads that don't even properly convey what it was Reagan was attempting to say. They cut it up in a way to make it seem that modern-day Reagan would be criticizing tariffs, when if you actually contextualize the quotes, he says nothing of the sort. And the idea that we are spending these ads during the World Series on Fox News, on channels that we know with absolute certainty that Donald Trump is going to be watching, it really makes you shake your head and think to yourself, are they intentionally throwing these negotiations? Is somebody like Ford, is somebody like Carney set to profit off of the failed negotiations with Canada so the Canadian people suffer, but a very small percentage of people at the top make money hand over fist? That wouldn't surprise me in the least, but Mark Carney's a guy with, like I said, 90% of his investments are in the United States of America. I would not put it past this guy for 1 second to be looking out for his own financial interest and saying, screw the Canadian people. Nothing about what he's shown me has given any indication he could give one crap about middle and lower class Canadians. And his work on the economy so far has been absolutely pitiful. He was elected because he was the so-called adult in the room who had experience at the Bank of England, Bank of Canada. He was this well-known economist who could deal with Trump in these trade negotiations. And the results thus far have been absolutely disastrous for Canada. It's embarrassing. Please like, share, subscribe, join, become a member. And what do you think? It certainly seems to me as though the Canadian negotiators are almost intentionally throwing this thing.